We packed up our things to leave Barrie and go to Niagara Falls to meet with the Bridge Commission. We left a nice note for our Airbnb owner with some Arnie cards and a little clapboard chain. I know it seemed a little silly, but I wanted the owner to know how much we appreciated staying in that beautiful home. It was awesome. When we arrived at the bridge, at the Rainbow Bridge, we were escorted into some secret doors and up an elevator only staff can go up, and we ended up on the bridge. This is a place that not everybody gets to see, and it was just such a cool vantage point of the falls and the traffic coming through customs. It was really neat. We got to meet with Stephanie Defoe. She is the Chief Operating Officer for the Niagara Falls Bridge Commission. Stephanie was amazing. She gave us the time we needed. She talked about Arnie and all of her recollections of him and what it was like being with him as he was working at the bridge. She also found it really surprising to think about how Arnie had trouble with literacy. She really didn't have a really clear understanding of how low his literacy skills actually were, because he always hid what he couldn't do.
One day at work, I was acting foreman, and I used to do that every year for a couple months a year. One day I'm sitting at the big desk with my white hat on. I had papers all over the desk to make it look important. The car pulled up outside the building and two bosses come in, the superintendent and the manager of the Bridge Commission. And they were carrying this paper. Oh my God, what am I going to do? What do they want? So in the office they come. Hey, how are you today? Good. We have a problem here. And they handed me this piece of paper. And I looked at the paper and I wasn't sure what to do, but I go, I have to pretend I'm reading this. And my head went back and forth like I was reading it. My stomach was all tied up in knots. And I go, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I took it and I handed it back to the superintendent. And I go, I don't know, sir, what do you think? He goes, yeah, get their door fixed and get that office painted. I go, not a problem, sir. I took the paper and I threw it in the corner with the other papers, the pile of them on the desk. And they left the office. And I ran into the washroom and I threw up in the toilet. My stomach was so much in knots that I never got caught. I was so happy. I knew up at the top of that letter it said border brokers. So I used to phone my wife up if she was home and say, what does this letter say? And I used to spell the words to her and she'd tell me. And it was border brokers, and he wanted the door fixed. The hinges were coming apart on it, and the office needed paint. No problem. That day I went and got all the stuff. The next day I had it all done. But what pressure I went through being a boss and not wanting the boss's job, but trying to do the best I can and lying, pretending I could do it.
I had no idea that the employees of the Bridge Commission were actually following what we were doing and were looking forward to us coming to visit. And they were listening to my podcasts and reading about Arnie and watching his clips. And Stephanie said that one woman in particular phoned her up and she was crying because she had been listening to the Arnie story. And I don't know if that lady knew Arnie or not, but people were being moved by it. So this man, Pat, says to me, I want to tell you how inspiring I find this to be. You know, I love the story about Arnie's garden, how Arnie said he was somebody who is just passed over in life. And when he says, water me a little bit, love me a little bit, and I can become a beautiful flower. And I'm looking at this guy going, how do you know this? It was amazing. And Sylvia had the cameras there, and I was like, record this because Pat is brilliant. Another thing Pat did, the man who had Arnie's role, is he reached in his pocket and pulled out an Arnie card. And he said, I keep this with me now because I have to always remember to ask for help. We went back across the bridge and down to the crew room. They had coffee going for us, and there was a gentleman named Mike Riddick who used to actually know Arnie so well that he had been invited to Arnie's house one year during the holidays. And Mike talked to us. He was great. He was so articulate. And he had so many great memories of Arnie. He even remembered that Arnie walked around with a newspaper under his arm. And he said, we all assumed Arnie could read and write because if you couldn't read and write, why are you carrying around a newspaper? And I laughed because I do remember Arnie saying that.
Where I work on the border between Canada and U.S., I got truckers now that talk back and forth on their CBs. You know that guy that can't read and write down that bridge? Just ask for Arnie. And when they get there, they go, do you know who this Arnie guy is? Yeah, that guy over there in the yellow jacket. And they come over and they say, oh, hi, Arnie. I got a little bit of a problem. I have a problem reading and writing. They say, you could help me. And I remember this one guy, he was almost in tears because he said, well, I'm going to lose my job. He said, I carry this hazmat and stuff on there, and I need to do all this paper stuff right. He said, I could read a little bit, but I can't write. And he said, the U.S. Customs told me the next time I come over, and if I don't do this printing better, that I'm not allowed to come across this bridge anymore with this stuff on the truck. He said, what am I going to do? And he was crying. Here was a man, 40-some years old, crying because he was going to lose his job. He said, but I need somebody that can help me fill out these papers now. So I took him upstairs to this one young lady. She was a secretary, a broker. And he would take his papers up there. She would read everything to him, make sure that he understood. Then he wrote his name on the bottom to make sure that he had what was in the truck was properly so that he can get through customs. And this is about 8-10 years ago. And this guy now just has the biggest smile on his face now because he doesn't have to go to anybody. He does it himself now. And he is a very, very proud man, and he kept his job. And he doesn't have to worry about his family anymore.
I know you're listening to this podcast, all of you at the Rainbow Bridge. I want to thank you so much for this day. After we talked with Mike, after we talked with Pat, and we looked at the jacket, at the vest, I turned around and there was Arnie's son, Alan. I went with Alan in the car and we went for a little tour of the city. We ended up at the Old Red Barn restaurant.
But I went around, looked around, I seen a bunch of cars in the parking lot. So I went and I slept in the back of one. The doors were open, so I figured, well, I'll sleep in here. And the owner caught me in the morning in the car. He said, what are you doing in here? Are you trying to steal something? And I go, no, I'm just sleeping in here. I got no place to stay. So he said, okay, you could stay in here, but don't you dare steal anything. I go, no, I'll be like a watchman for you. And that was in Victoria Avenue in Niagara Falls. And it was beside this great big, not a restaurant, but a big plaza. And beside that there was a little restaurant called the Red Barn. And after 2 days of sleeping in the car, I was really hungry. I couldn't get nothing to eat. So I used to wait until it got sort of dark at night where no one would see me. And I used to go in the garbage cans and shoo away the flies. Take a little bit of chicken out of the garbage and a little bit of French fries out of the garbage and take them back to the car. I seen that cheese in the window at the grocery store next door. And I wanted it so bad. It was a big brick and must have weighed 10 pounds. So I figured a way to get it is get a big rock and wait until dark and go up and smash the window and grab the cheese and run with it. Nobody could ever catch me. I got up to the window and I had the rock in my hand and I was going to smash that window and grab that cheese and run like a mouse. Big mouse. But I got scared. Somebody or something told me not to do it. Don't do it. Don't break that window. And I went and I threw the rock away behind the building. And I went back to the car. And I slept. And the next day I got up and I said, what am I going to do? I'm really hungry. And I seen all these teenagers getting out of high school. And they were going up to this little place called the Red Barn to eat. So I said, well, I'll go up there. Maybe somebody up there knows where I can get a job somewhere. So I went up and I walked around, and there was these two young teenagers sitting at a picnic table. And I asked if I could sit with them. They said, yeah. And one girl said, I never see you at the school. What school do you go to? And I said, well, I don't go to school. They said, well, do you live around here? And I go, no, I'm sleeping in a parked car. I hitchhiked from Cobalt down here. And they looked at me kind of funny, and one of them put out their hand and offered me some French fries. So I took some French fries. I was hungry. And they said, well, you come on down here tomorrow. So I said, okay. I went back to the car, and I thought, they just wanted to get rid of me. But I said, well, the next day coming, I said, maybe I'll go back up. Maybe they'll be there. So away I went back the next day, and there was them two young girls sitting there again. So I sat down with them. One girl gave me this brown bag. Said, this is for you. And I took the bag and looked inside. It was a sandwich. Bacon, tomato, and lettuce sandwich. She says, oh, I got this from home for you. And I go, oh, thank you so much. I said, will you be back here tomorrow? They said, yeah. So I got up and went back to the car, and I ate that sandwich. It was so good. That sandwich was so good, I went back, and I fell in love with that little girl, and I married her. And that's 45 years ago. I'm still with the same girl feeding me. And she's my little angel girl.
It was our last day, and this is my last kind of entry about the trip. So much has happened. I can't wait to tell you more what's happened since we got back. I mean, this was October. It's been 2 months. It's like an eternity for this project. As usual, I will show you a couple pictures of us. We went up in the Skylon Tower, and we were at the very, very top looking out over the falls. And while we were up there, the falls turned blue. Cobalt blue. We had some fun up there. We actually had our photo taken, and we all got in a barrel, went over the falls. I mean, we just had to have a moment of levity because the trip was so it was high emotions. It was hour by hour, something fabulous happened for us. And I gotta believe that Arnie's smiling somewhere watching this happen. This ended up being my very favorite photograph of the team. You can see Sylvia and Stephanie, Sony, George, and Doug around me. And I felt so just exuberant, They handed me the footage, and I said, Stephanie, you have to capture this moment. I made her take these pictures. I smiled, I was excited, and then I just looked down, and I can't tell you what that felt like. Been 20 years working towards this, and I just wish he was here to experience this with me, because this is our dreams come true. This is what we talked about back then. This is what we hoped for. And, I am 100% certain that this story is going to make a difference in the world in a big way. The next podcast will be about what's happened since then and what is on the horizon. Wait until you hear the next part.